Hi, Justin. So this is how you do the problems on the third page. We didn't talk about this yesterday, but these problems are not that hard. Essentially, you have to solve for an unknown. So, like question 1, determine whether 5 is a solution. All you do is you let x be 5, or you let the unknown there be 5. And then you just put the 5 in and see if it's true. See if it works out. Okay? So there you just plug. See, my picture is not very clear, but you plug 5 in for x. You work it out, and if the two sides are equal, then yes, 5 is a solution. Okay? And for example, is -4 a solution of x? Either plus or minus 6 equals 10. So you have x minus 6 equals 10. Let x equal -4. So then you plug it in. You substitute minus 6. It does equal 10. We'll do equals with a question mark 10. Okay? Turns out -4 minus 6. Do it on your calculator. You have -4 cups and you have -6 more cups. You have -10 cups equals 10. Not true. So x equals 4 is not a solution. Okay, now I think I may have seen the question wrong. It may be x plus 6. I can't really tell. My picture didn't come out that clearly. So that's how you do those problems. Okay. Now, how do you solve an equation? Okay, for a simple equation like x plus 5 equals 10. How do you do this? Well, you ask yourself, what number plus 5 equals 10? That's essentially what you're asking, okay? So obviously the answer is 5, right? Because 5 plus 5 equals 10. But if you want to do this more methodically, the way to do this is you have to isolate the x, okay? This method always works. Isolate the x. So you look at what you have on that side, x plus 5. You have to isolate the x. So you have to blow away the plus 5. Now this is where, remember they talked about in your book about inverse stuff. When you did it in class, you didn't pay attention because nobody pays attention because it's boring and you don't know nobody cares about this. But an inverse thing blows away something, okay? So if you have x plus 5 and you want to blow away the 5, you have to do the inverse of the plus 5. The inverse of the plus 5 is a minus 5, okay? So you have to remember that. Now let's say you have let's just do this one methodically, okay? So if you have an x plus 5, if you have an x plus 5 equals 10, okay, and you want to get that x by itself because that's how you solve the problem, you have to do the inverse to the plus 5. So you have x plus 5, and then you do the inverse to the plus 5. You do a minus 5. But whatever you do on one side, you have to do on the other. Okay? So important. I wish I could do color, but I don't want to waste the time. Whatever you do on one side, you must do on the other. Okay? Okay? So let's get back to this thing. Now, this thing, x plus 5 minus 5 equals 10 plus 5. Now we reduce the problem to something we did before. You just do each side, right? X plus 5 minus 5 is x plus 0, or simply x. And that equals 10 minus 5. 10 minus 5 you do on a calculator, or you could do on your head. X equals 5. That's the answer, okay? So that's how you do that. Okay, now let's say you have a problem where it's like this. It's got 3x equals 9. 3x equals 9. Okay? There, you don't, yeah, there you have to, the x is by there. X is bothered by a times 3. right? Or a multiplication. Multiplication, okay? Something like that, multiplication, right? X is bothered by a multiplication. So you have to get x alone. Now remember what the inverse of a multiplication is? The inverse of a multiplication is a division. Division, okay? So, you have 3x equals 9. You have to blow away the x. So you have to go 3x, and then you have to divide that. You have to divide that by a 3. Okay? Okay, so you divide that by a 3. And now that equals, now you have the 9 up here. But remember, whatever you do on one side of the equation, you have to do on the other. So if you divide the side, if you do the inverse, you multiplying by 3, you have 3x's being multiplied. You divide that 3x by 3. You have to divide this side by 3 also. Okay, divide that side by 3. Now you just do the math. 3x divided by 3 is just 3 divided by 3 times x, right? And what's 3 divided by 3? That's equal to just 1 times x, right? And 1 times x is simply 1 times x is simply x, right? Okay? Now, what's 9 divided by 3? 9 divided by 3, you either know or you use your calculator. That's equal to 3. So, this is ultimately equal to x equals 3. And that's the answer. Okay? So that's how you do these problems. If the x is bothered by a number like that, equals 10. Okay, if x is bothered by an addition, you do the opposite of whatever the x is bothered by. So that would be x minus 7. You add 7 equals 10. You add 7. Do whatever you do on one side to blow away the x, to blow away the number bothering the x, do on the other side. So this is x plus 7 minus 7 is x, and then obviously that's 17. Okay? And if x is bothered by a multiplication, like 6x equals 18, right, you have to divide the 6x by 6, and you have to divide the 18 by 6. Okay, so if you divide the 6x by 6, you get x, and then you have to write down in your calculator 18 divided by 6. Make sure you do basically I want to say make sure you do it on both sides. Make sure you do it on both sides. That's so important, okay? You have to do whatever you do on one side to get that x by itself, that inverse thing, either the subtraction or the addition, or the multiplication or the division. You have to do it on the other side. Now, on the top part of the last page, you have a problem. It's basically the same problem, looks a little different, so let's just finish that one off. What is that? N divided by N, where's the divided? N divided by 8 equals -6. So they're asking you what number do you have to divide by 8 to get -6. Okay, so let's write this out. N divided by 8 equals -6. Right? Let's see, I just got a text up. Okay, n divided by 8 equals -6. Okay, now you have to get the n by itself. That's the goal. Get n by itself. Okay, you got to get n by itself. Okay? So how do you get n by itself? N is being divided by 8. Okay? N is divided by 8. Okay? N is divided by 8. Now, what's the inverse of division? Right? No, it's not that. What is the inverse of division? The inverse of division is multiplication. Okay? The inverse of division is multiplication. N divided by 8. The inverse of division is multiplication. Whatever. Okay? So you have to multiply both sides by 8. So it's N divided by 8. Now we are going to multiply both sides by 8. We'll use that little parentheses thing there. Equals, remember what we do? -6. We have to do it to both sides. Okay? Right? Whatever we do to one side, we have to do the other. Now, what's N divided by 8 times 8? N divided by 8 times 8 is just N, right? Because 8 divided by 8 is 1. So that's we get the N by itself, so we win on that side. Now we just use the calculator to do -6 times 8. So you just plug in -6 times 8 into your calculator, and you get -48. So that's the answer. N equals -48. Okay? So that's how you do all these problems. They're all the same. Okay? Occasionally, you know, you may have the most complicated case, which is 4 divided by 5 x plus 8 equals 10 or something like that. Okay? So that's the most complicated case, right? First step is you have to take the -8 from both sides. So you do a -8 on both sides, a -8 on both sides. And that gives you 4/5 times x equals 10 minus 8, which is 2. Right? So now we have the 4 divided by 5 x equals -2. Okay, now do one thing at a time, right? So you have the 4, you have the 4 divided by 5 x minus 2. So the 4 is being multiplied. So we have to divide that thing by 4. So we have 4x how are we going to do this? We have the 4x divided by 5, and then we divide that thing by 4. All right, we have to do the opposite. We have to divide the left-hand side by 4, so we have x. Now, whatever we do on this side, right, we have to do on this side divided by 4. Right, and that's equal to what's minus a half? Minus 2 divided by 4 is like a minus 1/2, right? Minus a half. Okay. So therefore, we basically have up here. We basically have x divided by 5 equals minus a half, right? Right. So we blew away the 4 in the numerator, right? We blew away the 4 in the numerator by dividing everything by 4. Now notice we have x divided by 5 equals a half, okay? So that's this problem. Sorry. We have x, now we have another problem. We have x divided by 5 equals minus 1/2, okay? Now remember, you have the x bothered by a division, so we have to multiply both sides by 5. We have to multiply both sides by 5, okay? So we have x divided by 5 times 5 is simply x. We blew that away. Now we have to multiply this minus a half times, isn't that pretty? You have a little asterisk there, times 5. So then this is just simply, whatever, do it on your calculator. You know, it's 2.5, it's minus 2.5, okay? He may not give you a problem with fractions, but this is how you do this problem, okay? You do one step at a time. First you have to get rid of the, notice how I got rid up here. Notice here, let's see. Notice here I got rid of this first. See that? I got rid of the plus 8 first. So do that, okay? If you have 4x over 5 plus 8, you get rid of that first. I think you may have a problem like that. No, actually you don't. Yes, you may have a problem like that. But I don't think you do. Wow, cool. Very, very cool. So that's great. So basically, if you have a plus, if you have this x bothered by a plus or a minus, you do the inverse. And then if you have it multiplied, you do the inverse. And we'll just go over one more really, really quick time. This whole thing about inverse. Remember, okay, don't save this. Okay, so added inverse of addition is subtraction. Inverse of subtraction is addition. Inverse of multiplication is division. Inverse of division is multiplication. Okay, that's it. Okay, that's it for this one. Okay, speak to you later. Call me. Of course, call me anytime if you have a question, but give those homework questions a try, and good luck on the test.